Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's community conversation on large-scale compost. Our conversation is hosted by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. My name is Lydia Linke, and I am the team leader of the Climate Action Group within the Boulder County League. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. For 100 years, we have encouraged informed and active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. The mission of the League of Women Voters, LWV, is to empower voters and defend democracy. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League of Women Voters of Boulder County works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy through candidate forums, ballot issue presentations, and community conversations. We rely on generous donations of our members and community to achieve our mission. Please consider donating today at lwvbc.org or PayPal. Both links are in the chat. If you want to lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is at www.lwvbc.org. There has been a fair amount of news, controversy, and discussion surrounding the possibility of compost production on an increased scale within Boulder County. The League of Women Voters has several national policy positions, including on air quality, water resources, solid waste, climate change, public participation on environmental issues, and agricultural policies. The League's purpose and intention for the event tonight is to discuss the history of composting, costs and benefits associated with large-scale composting, and ideas about where we go from here as a community. The event is not a platform on which to debate specific locations for composting facilities, types of facilities, or to present or take sides on the county's recent proposal. This event is not sponsored by the county, nor has it been organized in coordination with the county. LWVBC welcomes the opportunity to discuss both the merits and concerns about large-scale composting. And on this or any other issue, League encourages respectful conversation among community members who may either agree or disagree with each other. The panelists that we have asked to take part in this discussion are experts in their given fields. We are honored to have them here with us today. I will introduce them all together. However, each will be giving their own presentation. You can read the bios for each of our panelists on our registration page. The link for this information will be in the comments. Tim Broderick, Senior Sustainability Strategist, Boulder County Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resiliency, OSCAR. Dan Matsch is the Department Director at EcoCycle's Compost Department. Bob Yost, VP and Chief Technical Officer for A1 Organics, Rocky Mountain Region's largest commercial composting company. Charlie Kamenides, Longmont Waste Services Manager and Chair of Boulder County Recycling and Conservation Advisory Board, RCAB. And Elizabeth Black, founder of Citizen Soil Health Project. Citizen Science Soil Health Project. Now here is Jeanette Hillary, long-term League member, who will be our main moderator for today. Oh, Jeanette, I think you need to unmute.
Thank you, Lydia. And I want to thank the entire Climate Action team that helped work out this topic and our invitations. Lydia has outlined what our some of our goals and expectations are for this evening. And I'm going to start with the first panelist. Each panelist has about 5 to 10 minutes. Many of them have some video slides or a screen sharing to do. So we'll start with Tim Broderick, who's with Boulder County. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for the introduction, Jeanette. Let's see if we can share my screen here. Okay. All right, if I can just get a thumbs up that looks good. Thank you. Okay, as Jeanette mentioned, my name is Tim Broderick, Senior Sustainability Strategist with the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience for Boulder County. Through community-wide polls, public hearings, input from our community zero waste leaders and the Resource Conservation Advisory Board, zero waste services and infrastructure such as composting and recycling have had many years of public support. Our community has also shared their support for strong climate action, and the Board of County Commissioners made climate action one of the county's key strategic priority areas. After multiple overlapping disasters right here in Boulder County, climate-fueled wildfires, extreme high heat, and poor air quality, the impacts of climate change are local, and climate change cannot be ignored. In partnership with our municipalities and local and statewide organizations, the county has been deeply committed to mitigating the climate crisis and the impacts of climate change on our community. Given that composting achieves multiple goals of waste diversion and regenerates soil health, our community zero waste leaders, colleagues in Parks and Open Space, and county staff across departments have been exploring ways to locally process our organic waste for quite some time. Starting in 2005, there was a zero waste resolution passed that set a waste diversion for Boulder County government and for the county as a whole to be at 50% or better by the year 2010 in waste diversion, and to eliminate waste or achieve darn near by 2025. Going forward a couple years from there, in 2010, the Zero Waste Action Plan set out how best to achieve this zero waste or darn near by 2025. One short-term strategy laid out in this plan is to increase the support for additional composting. Quote, any forthcoming recommendations for siting a new facility for commercially generated discards would be supported by this plan element. In 2016, the countywide sustainability sales and use tax extension was approved with a 70% ballot approval. Language included in that countywide sustainability sales tax and use extension, quote, recycling and composting services and facilities for Boulder County residents and business owners to help reduce waste, end quote. In 2018, the Environmental Sustainability Plan, published, brought forward the goals of supporting local compost infrastructure and improvement of soil health. Quote, increase food and yard waste diversion through composting, including support for local infrastructure. So where do we stand today as we look back over the period dating all the way to 2005? Currently, the county is at an estimated diversion rate between 40 and 45%. Nearly 2/3 of the materials sent to the landfill in the county could have been recovered. Through recycling and composting, these materials could have saved 240,000 metric tons of carbon emissions per year. We know this number from our Zero Waste Scorecard report that we published about a year ago at this point in time. The chart that you see below there is, and sort of expanded upon, is the total disposed amount of materials that we are sending to the landfill. Organics make up 11% of that total material. Simply put, we're throwing away valuable resources to combat climate change and increase the health of our soils. Environmental benefits, those on this call like Bob Yost and Elizabeth will be able to, and Dan Mage can go into this for nth degrees and have whole presentations on the benefits of applying compost. But from the perspective of the county, some that we highlight and focus on is avoided emissions from the landfill of organic materials. Estimated, we would see around the equivalent of CO2 offset That would be the use of the power to power 623 homes per year. Carbon sequestration and soil enrichment from agricultural use of compost. Recently, the USDA passed the use of compost as a conservation practice, this solidifying it as something that one of our highest branches of agriculture sees as a conservation practice and a sustainable practice. With an estimate that we know from our calculations, around 6,000 metric tons of CO2 per year could be sequestered through the application of compost, which is the equivalent of taking 1,160 passenger vehicles off the road for a year. Reduction of synthetic fertilizers and chemical inputs. We estimate through the use of diverting these materials from the landfill that around 2,000 tons of CO2 just by the reduction of synthetic fertilizers and chemical inputs by the substitution of compost could be offset. Increasing water capacity holding. For every 1% increase in soil organic matter, the soil's water holding capacity increases on average 20,000 to 25,000 gallons per acre, as compost can be applied to increase that soil organic matter. Increase soil microbiome, plant, and human health. The use of compost and reduction in synthetic fertilizers on cropland increases the health of the soil microbiome. This in turn also increases plant health and their resistance to pests and diseases, which further helps reduce the farmer's need for synthetic fertilizers and chemical inputs. This is a place where you can access all that's going on in Oscar and sort of stay up to date as we continue to tackle this issue of organics in our waste stream and what is the best ways to divert. So please, if you get a chance, sign up there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. If you have questions, you can go to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen and submit those questions. I'd like to move on to our second speaker, and that's Dan Matsch, and he's with EcoCycle. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Let me pull up my presentation. Okay, first of all, I want to just make sure we're all talking about the same thing here. What do we mean by compost? So we're talking about commercial compost. Commercial compost is made from source separated organic waste. We're not picking up compost. We're making compost out of organic waste. And in this case, organic is not referring to organic as in organic farming. It's the biological definition, anything that was once alive. And also it's important to stress that this is source separated organic waste. This is not mixed trash. So here's the sources. Every city in the county, not the towns, but every city already has a municipal curbside collection. Then there are a number of haulers including EcoCycle, doing commercial, meaning business and institutional collections. That ranges from CU to the smallest restaurants. It includes tree limb waste from arborists and municipal collection points such as Longmont has. Yard waste from landscapers. There are some specialty manure haulers in the county. And then it includes, if the composter is set up for it and it's convenient, it includes self-haulers, people bringing their own organic waste to the compost facility. And we're also talking about as opposed to backyard composting, which typically does not get hot. These are large piles that naturally achieve high temperatures because of microbial activity. And that allows the commercial composter to accept some items that you generally keep out of backyard composting, such as bones, meat, weeds, and compostable ware. So why do we care? It's 40% of the municipal waste stream. That's food and yard waste is 40% of the municipal waste stream. We're not doing a very good job of diverting it right now. The state is at 8%, as Tim just mentioned. The county is doing better. Right now, we're doing a good job as a county, but it is traveling a great distance. It's a 100-mile round trip from the Boulder transfer station that all organic material that's collected goes to right now, and it goes to a long haul trailer and is transported to A1 Organics, who you'll hear from in a little bit, in Keenesburg. I want to say, A1 Organics is a fabulous composter. I am not knocking A1 Organics as a composter here. It's the location that's the issue. And then finished compost is a valuable soil amendment, but the transport costs make compost too expensive as a local resource for agriculture, which I'm going to circle back to for a second as being an important thing. So here's that cost very quickly. So on the left in the blue, you have the total cost for landfilling between the tip fee that the hauler pays and the transportation costs. That's about $30 a ton. As I mentioned, the compost gets transferred to a long haul trailer. That adds significant cost. And so the total cost for haulers is roughly 3 times that in Boulder County. And so specifically, why should there be a county-owned compost facility? So one reason, security. We only have one composter who is certified to accept food waste in the entire Metro Denver area, the entire Front Range. That's A1. If something were to happen to them, there are not only all the collection programs in Boulder County, but all across the Front Range, there are a growing number of collection programs that would be in danger. Tim already mentioned this. This aligns with county and municipal goals and voter-supported initiatives. There is an environmental justice aspect of this. Right now, as a county and all of Metro Denver, we tend to send, or at least northern part of Metro Denver, we're in the habit of sending our waste to Weld County. Weld County doesn't necessarily appreciate that. Weld County is growing very quickly as well. So that's an issue. There's neighbors wherever you go. The county needs finished compost for its own projects. Tim had the slide of the fire burn from last fall. There's a lot of rangeland. If you drive around, there's a lot of open space rangeland that's desertifying. Compost is a great use for that. There are reforestation projects. And then there's all the developed parkland and the county facilities. Also, the county has the opportunity to drive behavior. So if the county is able to set the tip fees, let's say we want more manure to come to the facility, you can set the tip fees accordingly. And then finally, I'd say the greatest, the reason that I'm excited about a local facility is the idea of carbon sequestration, carbon farming. This comes out of about a 10-plus-year-old research project that was initiated in Marin County, California, called the Marine Carbon Project, which is the first time that peer-reviewable science demonstrated the value of applying a half inch of compost on the surface, on the surface of grassland to sequester carbon. And there's much to be learned about what is the potential for building soil to sequester carbon. If we did that on a global scale, what would be the impact on climate change? And so we don't know the answer to that yet, except that we can say with some certainty that it's probably the best natural tool that we have to actually draw down carbon dioxide. These pictures, these two slides on the bottom just illustrate that cattle are naturally drawn towards the composted areas because that grass is richer, tastier. So this is a global application that we're looking at, and then this affects 3 different things. So climate change already mentioned, Restoring lost topsoil. We've heard for decades how topsoil has been lost globally. And then food nutrition. We have mined the minerals out of our soil, and we need to replace it. And here's what we're really trying to do in Boulder County is create this circular economy for organics where we're generating, collecting organic waste, processing it locally for composting, and then we're getting it back to local farmers, giving them opportunity to adopt more regenerative practices, composting being one key element, one such key element. That's the end of my presentation. So I'll look forward to questions, and I will stop screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Dan. Very informative and helpful. Our next speaker is going to be Bob Yost, and he's with A1 Organics, where at this point, all of our compostable material is getting shipped off to. And I know he has a rather long screen share, but I think it'll be very informative. Thank you so much, Bob.
Well, thank you for having me up. I'm going to show a video just basically as introduction to A1 Organics and what we do out at our site at Keenesburg, where your material is currently going. There'll be information in there that'll probably spur some questions. There'll be background information, videos about us, I understand, but again, I think it will give you an overview of a commercial composting operation. It's not one like what was being designed in Boulder, but it reflects commercial composting. And it talks about our history a little bit. And we do a lot of composting. We process organics every year, about 425,000 tons of incoming material. So I'll share this video. Hopefully it'll address some of your questions, and then I'll look for questions later in our presentation. So I'll share my video here, and hopefully I can get this to work. If I can find the right screen here. And you know what, I need to get down. I got to go back a second, make sure. Yeah, I got the sound thing on, so we're good with that. Back to where I'm at.
Actually happens. So simple, yet so complex. I get really pumped on that kind of stuff. The moisture is in good shape. That's what's really nice. It smells great. Well, like I said, we were green before green was cool. Dwayne and Chuck Wilson were very, very highly thought of in the industry. I mean, you can ask any composter in the United States about A1 Organics, and they know Dwayne and Chuck. Dwayne Wilson was the patriarch of our company. It was a farming operation, a lamb feeding operation. Lambs make manure, and they had a problem with the manure and how to use it. He had set up a composting operation to reduce the volume and make a stable product out of the manure. A1's always been a family-owned business that really took a problem and turned it into a solution.
They just had the foresight to see, and they had the courage to go forward with what they felt was the right thing to do.
So A1 Organics is an organics recycler. We recycle over 425,000 tons of material a year. That is a lot of material.
We found that almost 50% of what people throw away from their households is organic material.
Once it gets here, we're going to shred it, make it smaller, and then we're going to add that into a composting pile. We let that sit for up to 90 days. Of course, we're going to process it. We're going to turn it. We're going to add oxygen to it. And then once it's broken down, you bring that back to the garden or to the farm or to your home, and you're putting that back down on the ground exactly where it came from.
And the difficult thing about it is you're going to have different moisture contents, different solid contents, different volumes in each one of the loads. And the guys are basically chefs without recipes. They know where they want to end up, and they know by the feel and the look of the product that they're blending and mixing whether or not they're on the right track with it. And that's pure experience, pure experience.
At the next mine is going to be 42 years work for A1. I love my job. I love the people surround A1, and it's a big reason to be here.
One of the biggest assets A1 Organics has is our employees. They're problem solvers. You find good people. People are more important than any of to me.
Everybody needs to know that what they're doing is important and that they do count.
If you have people and you invest in your people and you let them know, they'll produce, and they're all part of the family. It's a family.
It's one of the few pictures we still have of Dwayne
Chuck,
in the business.
yeah. Miss him. We lost Dwayne about 5 years ago in August, and then the following April, Chuck passed away unexpectedly.
We're dedicated to making sure that A1 doesn't end at this generation, that it becomes a fifth, a sixth, a seventh generation family company. That's how important this family is to me.
Is the lack of rain we had. We had a recorded 4.03 inches of rain from January 1st to June 30th.
Wow, that's
And that includes snow.
Saving water in Colorado is extremely important. We are in a drought right now, a large Colorado drought.
No rain, no nothing. And that's why we got all this dust. As a society worldwide, we've stripped our topsoils, we put pavement down. Our soils are dead. With composting, what we try to do is to get back to nature.
Organics is a natural resource. This is a natural material that can provide so many amazing benefits back to the environment.
So when you put organic material in a landfill, you basically entomb it. You cut off light, you cut off some air, and you cut off some moisture. And so the material in that situation degrades anaerobically, which means as it degrades, it creates methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. On the flip side, if you put that organic material into the composting system, you add moisture, you add air, you let it have light, it really starts to degrade in a more natural way. It doesn't create the methane gas. And what you get is a very nutrient-dense, condensed soil amendment.
The need for diversion and recycling only gets bigger every year, especially in a state like Colorado.
Climate has changed forever. Man's impact on it, you can debate what impact it has or doesn't, but climate changes. So our mission is to be the organic waste solution for a more sustainable Colorado. So I take the approach that, look, why would I want to pollute? There's no value in that. So if I can help keep carbon dioxide out of the air or methane out of the air, that's an improvement. So I don't like getting into the political side of it. It's just common sense.
The value of compost is just, it's amazing. You're going to retain an additional 100 gallons of water in your soil from a cubic yard of compost that is applied to that soil. So you have to water less, be more efficient. It's a no-brainer. It's going to save you money in the long run.
When you put compost in the ground, it kind of like kickstarts this process of bringing carbon down from the atmosphere and storing it in the soil.
That could be equivalent to maybe one commute for maybe 40 miles. That's the impact. You just did that to your lawn and you kind of offset some of the carbon impact from your car.
If we can get to a place economically where farmers can use more and more organic matter, then they've got the ability to move away from chemical fertilizers, get the same type of nutrients with better organic matter into their soil. In the end, we'll all be better off.
We could never get to 425,000 tons a year if it wasn't for each and every individual that's making the commitment and the choice to divert these materials and bring it to us instead of sending it to the landfill.
I'm so blessed to have 26,000 customers who have opted in to this program and are paying for it for no other reason than it's the right thing to do.
We have been a steward of the land, and that's a huge purpose for us. That's a huge mission for us. And that made me really proud to be involved with something that we're looking towards the future. We're taking care of generations to come. We're preparing them for a better world and a better life.
We want to bring people together. When it's about you, it doesn't work. If you serve to be served, you'll benefit. I mean, that's a principle I wish the whole world would understand.
Okay, that's the video. And again, I won't repeat many of the things that you're going to hear throughout the presentations. And what Dan said, I'll just stand by for questions and hopefully people get an idea what the commercial side of it looks like. So I'll go offline here, or not offline, but I'll off the video and you can go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. And then our next speaker is Charlie Kamenides. He's from Longmont, and he'll give a local municipality perspective. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Jeanette. And thank you, everybody, for being here. What a great platform to have a community discussion to talk about this topic. I purposefully didn't create a presentation. I want to let everybody know that, because what we've seen Tim and Dan and Bob Yost present, really I would just repeat those same things. But what I'd like to share is what's going to be important is getting into some of these questions down the road here, because I think that's where some of the meat and potatoes are going to be for us. But you know, many of us in like it was said earlier, every community in Boulder County has a curbside collection program, and we're collecting this compost. And we are shipping it, as Dan had mentioned, you know, just a tremendous distance. And, you know, he touched on the circular economy. We should be developing it here and using it here as well. I can speak for the city of Longmont, and I know that as a community, we're committed to diverting a wide variety of materials. And we do everything from recycling to cardboards to oils. And green waste and organics is also a piece of our portfolio. You know, we have, as Denver does, an opt-in program, and we have 22% or so of our community volunteering to pay that extra fee for composting. And we're starting to develop, you know, a large amount of tonnage that annually we're just shipping to Keenesburg as well. And our council is committed and believe that other communities are too, that we need to develop a better approach in how we're dealing with our compost and our green waste. I think that there are probably more community outreaches that could be had to help address some of these questions that we see popping up in the Q&A, so that we can all sit around the table and say, what are the concerns and what are the benefits and what are going to be the best ways to do this, so that we can all find a good approach in developing a solution. I don't believe there's anything moving forward. I know Rainbow is off the table, as everybody is typing up here. I think moving forward, work is not being done yet, but from the Longmont perspective, it won't be a secret. And we would like in Longmont to have that public impact as well, or public input as we move forward. But in the big picture, I know that people like Tim are working hard for following through with our zero waste action plans that were devised years ago, that were approved and accepted by many communities. You know, Dan Matsch is a really knowledgeable individual, and you know, he does sit on our RCAB board as well, representing the town of Lyons, but he is working with EcoCycle, and he is one of the top people that I know in the United States that knows about organic material and how to compost it. And of course, Bob Yost and A1 Organics, you know, they're here joining us because they're the largest really composting company in the state of Colorado. So they really know what we're doing. I'd just like to be here to help answer some of these questions at the end of our presentations. But Longmont is going to continue moving forward with our waste diversion practices, and organics is really a big piece in that for us. So thank you, Jeanette. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Okay, hope there are good questions for everybody. Thanks, Charlie. Our last speaker right now, but certainly not least important, is Elizabeth Black. And welcome, Elizabeth. And I think you have a couple of screen share items also.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. I'm Elizabeth Black, and I run the Citizen Science Soil Health Project, which is a project to help Boulder, Larimer, and Weld County growers prove that they're improving their soil. As part of the Citizen Science Soil Health Project, we asked all 45 of our growers about their use of organic matter inputs, including compost, manures, mulches, and cover crops. The majority of our growers, the green and red wedges in this pie graph, add organic matter to their soil on a regular basis. but most of them use manure. Manure is cheap, often free, and easily available from large cattle and dairy operations out east. Many of Boulder's smaller organic growers also produce their own on-farm manure from their own small animal operations. We also asked our growers what was keeping them from applying more organic matter inputs. The top 3 impediments were that the price of inputs was too high, that hauling costs were too high, and that the availability of inputs was too low. Now, us city folks have our own image of spreading compost involving a wheelbarrow and some sweat. Spreading compost on a 170-acre field is a little more complicated. This picture shows how compost was spread on the county's quicksilver carbon farming project. The compost had to get hauled to the field along with this big red and white compost spreader, plus the tractor to pull the spreader. So I called up the guy driving the tractor in this picture to get a quote on the cost to spread compost on a field. Here's his quote. He and I assumed that the cost of the compost itself was the same, whether it was from the present facility in Keenesburg or from a hypothetical Boulder County composting facility. At the usual application rate, the cost of the raw compost is around $75 per acre. The cost of spreading the compost is the same in the 2 different scenarios also, at around $30 an acre. But when we look at the hauling costs from the 2 different locations, we see a big difference. Hauling from Keenesburg is $105 an acre versus only $30 an acre from Boulder. When you do the math, Boulder-made compost needs a $75 per acre savings. At the county's 170-acre quicksilver carbon farming project, that means an almost $13,000 savings on a one-time compost application. So we're not talking just chump change here. Let's look at some of the other impediments our growers mentioned to using more organic matter inputs. Weed seeds coming into fields from manure applications was the next most common concern. Many weeds pass through the guts of cows with their seed coats softened by stomach acid and get plopped into a nice big steaming pile of manure all ready to germinate. Weeds are a constant battle for our growers, and they don't want to do anything that will increase their weeding labor or use of herbicides. Commercial compost, on the other hand, is generally free of viable weed seeds because the composting process reaches temperatures high enough to bake and kill the seeds. Another important impediment our growers mentioned is food safety concerns in regards to using manure applications on their crops. Why is that? This is why. How many of you stopped buying Rocky Ford cantaloupes for at least a little while back when they had their outbreak? Or stopped eating at Chipotle when they had their E. coli outbreak? Or stopped buying bagged spinach during the salmonella outbreak? All these outbreaks are tied to manures and feces. This is why some of our growers are reluctant to use raw manures in their fields and only use compost now. Way back in 2013, the USDA recognized that manures were a problem. They proposed a new food safety rule that there must be 270 days, 9 months, between the time of raw manure application to a field and the time of crop harvest from the field. Small organic growers were up in arms about this proposed rule and fought it really hard. Many of them depended on manures to fertilize their crops, and they could not see a way to make this new rule work. That was because with their relatively small acreages and intensive crop rotations for vegetables, there was no 270-day fallow period to apply manure in. To keep their operations financially viable, they needed intensive crop rotations like the one pictured here. They lobbied really hard and were successful in getting the USDA to back down. The USDA is currently studying the matter further. For the time being, only the National Organic Program's standards apply. These say that there must be 90 to 120 days, 3 to 4 months, between raw manure application and harvest, depending on whether the crop touches the soil or not. However, if you fertilize with commercial compost instead of raw manure, these food safety concerns are greatly reduced. The high temperatures and resting times in the commercial composting process help to kill dangerous bacteria. Commercial composters must pass and publish frequent EPA tests for fecal coliform and salmonella bacteria in their products. So from a grower's perspective, a Boulder County composting facility makes a whole lot of sense. To a grower, it means more compost availability, lower hauling costs, fewer weeds in their fields, and better food safety for their customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was very informative. We have been accumulating questions, and Sylvia Bernstein has been moderating and following those questions. So I'm going to ask her to start asking the questions of our panelists. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvia Bernstein. I am the Action and Advocacy Director for the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. And I'm going to go ahead and ask these questions. And I would encourage those of you in the audience to please ask questions in the Q&A area in the bottom of your screen. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible, although at this point, we already probably have more than we can get to. So there is going to be combining of questions. There's definitely some themes running through a lot of these questions that I'm seeing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I will say that questions that are sort of worded as disrespectful or nasty are just going to be ignored. So I'm just going to put that out there right now. One of the themes that are going through the questions from our audience, and if I could have the panelists turn their screens back on, that would be great. Thank you. So one of the main questions that people ask have to do with the use of this compost, especially around, is it organic? Can it be used by organic farmers? Can it be used by farmers at all? So I'd like to have each of you speak about the use of the compost that would come out of this, starting with Tim.
So great question, excellent question. To be as honest as I can with the knowledge that I have, the full level of the varieties of the products that would have been created from a centralized compost facility would have been very dependent on the operator of said facility. And so it never even got to the stage where a bid could have been created to create those guidelines of the products that would have been needed to come out of said facility. And that would have been an ongoing discussion. And I absolutely think we would have had to align with the county's goals to increase organic farming within the county, right? And so recertification and all those pieces that may come along with it. And that's a part of our discovery process that we just never really got to at that stage. We, at the same time, there has been incredible tools and resources that have been developing quickly to demonstrate the power of carbon sequestration within urban applications. So that's municipalities, that's landscapers, where they don't need that same level or quality of the compost that is being created. So there's absolutely opportunity to create a variety of streams dependent on the need. Since the county has withdrawn from Old Rainbow Nursery, there has also been the conversation again of accelerating on-farm composting of those who are already doing it, who may be creating a quality product that is already in demand as one of the ways to solve creating a product specific to agricultural application. Whereas a centralized facility could still create a product specific for municipalities or landscapes or golf courses or these other places, again, where there's maybe not that high level of quality demand needed as there is with our organic farmers. That's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you, Tim. Dan, what's EcoCycle's view on how this compost would be used?
Well, I think Tim said it well. Every composter that I know makes a variety of products, matching the incoming feedstocks with the end markets that exist. Organic farms are one end market. As Tim mentioned, there are a lot of others. And then there's the county's needs itself. So, there is no shortage of uses for compost. And I'm a former organic farmer. Certainly my hope is that the operator will be able to make a product that is okay for a certified organic farmer to use. As Tim said, there may be other niche opportunities on farm to do the same thing. So my perspective is, as I mentioned, it's global. We need to get our organic waste stabilized as compost and applied to soil, and we need to do a lot of other regenerative ag practices as well. So compost, it'll find its end use, and I think if we can, we have to get a little bit creative about how to do that within agriculture, because the cost. If you're a commodity farmer, if you're growing wheat and barley, you don't have, your margins do not allow you to afford compost. So to do this globally, we have to get really creative about how to create incentives for farmers to adopt regenerative practices, and that's what I'm working on every day. It's not a simple solution, but we have to get there, and we have to get there globally. So that's my position.
Bob, does A1 actually produce an organic stream?
We do in this facility. There'd be no reason why a commercial facility there would not be able to produce OMRI or NOP certified compost from the streams that are being considered. They're right. You can have multiple streams, and the design that was being used for the facility, as currently was designed, included the ability to create organic OMRI certified. You do it through the NOP program. We do it through the NOP program. We also have we provide compost from all multiple streams to other producers and users that have to have OMRI certified, and they have it OMRI certified, and then we have our own OMRI certified. So the answer is no issue making an OMRI certified product at any commercial facility in Boulder.
Great. Charles, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'd just say, Bob has been making compost a lot longer than I have. I don't even make compost, and he's the expert when it comes to that technical level. And I think he directly answered that question. Thank you.
Okay. And Elizabeth, did you want to comment on this as well, or you think that it's been covered?
Just a couple things. Our organic growers, organic small vegetable growers, are the ones who have the highest income per acre for their crops. And so with that high income per acre, they are able to afford to apply compost. So they're kind of the first ones you think of for needing a compost product. So there's definitely a demand, a potential demand for an organic compost in the county. But there are lots of other places that city and county are using compost that don't require an organic product. For instance, the city of Boulder is doing a great deal of remediation on the approximately 1,000 acres of irrigated agricultural land that have been destroyed by prairie dogs. And the way that they have found to remediate that land, the best way they have found to remediate that land is after removing the prairie dogs to keyline plow, apply compost, and reseed. And so there's large amounts of compost that will be needed for remediation of those denuded lands. And that compost does not have to be organic. So there's lots of potential. You know, Tim mentioned the fire areas that will need compost applied. And so we have lots and lots of areas that can use compost that is not certified as organic.
Okay, thank you. I've seen a few questions around biosolids and adding biosolids into the compost stream. Who would like to take that question on?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
A lot of experience with that. Biosolids was not being part of, is an option to be composted at any compost facility in Colorado, take special permitting. There was the biosolids was not intended at the end to be a feedstock that Boulder had suggested was going to use. So no, it wasn't. And I would also say things like C&D, construction and demolition wood, was not a part of the process either. So those kind of give you an idea of some of the things that wouldn't be involved in my understanding of the Boulder County facility this time.
I'm sorry, what is C&D?
I'm sorry, construction and demolition.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry. Construction and demolition, like wood that you tear down a house or a building or something like that. That was not part of the feedstock, would not ever be part of the feedstock. Even in our facilities, we take no painted wood, no construction wood, you know, that kind of thing. So I thought those two kind of went together. So I thought I'd mention that. So no, biosolids wasn't, neither was raw, certain types of
raw
manure.
sewage. Okay.
Yeah, you never take raw sewage. I mean, when they talk about it, biosolids is not raw sewage. So let's get that on the table. But even the biosolids themselves, which can be composted and are highly composted throughout the country. And we produce a lot of biosolids compost that people just love. So we just, but not in Boulder County as far as a feedstock.
Okay. And confirmation from Tim that Boulder County is committed to not do biosolids?
Confirmed. It was on the, I believe, the Q&A section, frequently answered questions of the compost facility website, that they were not planning to accept biosolids at that facility.
Thank you.
Or in the future.
Related question, and that is around odor. So there's a lot of concern that there would be odor from a facility like this that would impact not only the people that are immediately adjacent, but I've heard, you know, up to 15 miles there would be odor from this facility. So Bob, clearly you have
yeah,
word on this. Talk to us about the smell.
So odors have a source. There always is a source. You identify the source and you remediate it. So in a composting, properly designed and operated composting facility is the key. Throughout the country, there are plenty of operations that are right next door to and very close to residential areas that operate successfully. So again, I would tell the principle is odors have a source. You find it, you make sure you remediate it if it occurs. But properly designed and managed facilities control odors very well. I mean, Colorado has some pretty tight regulations on odor at compliance with locations at the point of compliance, and you have to maintain those. And so the site that was being proposed in Boulder had been designed around that. So it was all, I would just say that I had full confidence that the facility as designed would be able to manage odors.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to that? Okay.
Well, I'll just mention that the system that was proposed for Boulder County to use, has a lot of environmental controls. It has a cover over the piles. The piles do not need to be turned. There's aeration through the compost piles are in concrete bunkers, and there's aeration through the concrete floor, and then there's a cover on top that does a great job of keeping odors within the pile until they are fully decomposed, because they do get decomposed by the microbes, and eventually they become oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then they can pass through. And I think, you know, a real challenge that we face here with this particular project is a lack of familiarity locally with anything but what I'll call windrow composting. And you know, I think the only way to fix that is to go to a similar facility. You know, we can't all do that, but I would strongly suggest that that the county send a delegation of folks to go look at some of these systems and you know, and see them for themselves and smell them for themselves, so that they, you know, have the confidence that they're not creating a nuisance within the county.
Dan, I would just add that, you know, you're talking about the design element, and that's what I was trying to allude to. That's very, very important. And so the system you described was called an aerated static pile system, or an in-vessel system, and they're very, very good at controlling odors.
There has been, I'm just going to push back just a little bit because of some of the questions that I'm seeing. So I'm getting questions about the wordings, managing odors or controlling odors. And people want to know, are there odors? Like, you know, is this something that they should be concerned about? Because this seems to be one of the #1 concerns out there. So I'm just going to throw the question back out about, what does managing or controlling odors mean?
So materials that come into facility that they have designed are pretty much low odor stuff. You're thinking about the food waste. I heard references during the thing about raw garbage and piles of food waste, and those are just way offline. You don't take them like that. It comes in, it's managed in a controlled environment. It's in a building where that's the first source of odors. So if you're unloading the truck, the material coming off could have an odor, and it will have an odor. Now, is it a massive odor? No. But is it an odor? Yes. You do that inside. You have the type of filtration and controlled air environments to control it. It's blended with your carbon source. Once it's with the carbon source, there's hardly any odor. The odor is pretty much eliminated. It's transported into a bunker. It's placed in the bunker. It's covered every night, so that at the end of every day, to control odors. Odors in composting, if they're going to occur at any level that would be what I would call a nuisance odor, would happen in the first 2 weeks of the process. So once you hit your thermophilic temperatures, you're up at 131 degrees to 160 degrees in the pile, the bacteria are doing their work. They're converting those odors. They're taking volatile organic compounds, which is what creates the odor, and they use that as a food source. So the bacteria themselves, the microbes, are the ones that are doing the best job. And then you have, as Dan explained, the membrane. So controlling them is during basically a two-phase process, both in your receipt of your feedstocks and in your processing itself. Get open windrow. We have very low odors on our open windrow system, but they have a potential for more open windrows odors than an enclosed system. So this was being designed as if somebody was living right next door to it. And then the last one is managing them if you do find them. So odors can occur off a site. You can have water that's been in a stagnant puddle. You can have some feedstock that didn't get mixed up properly, and it's an open air. That's what I mean when you find an odor. If a properly managed facility identifies an odor, there is a source, and you find that source and you remediate it, meaning you pick it up and you cover it, or you move it back to the right place. You don't just let it out there. That's how you manage the odors. You manage them through your process and also through your operations. That's the best way I can explain it.
Thank you, Bob. That was a tremendous explanation. Now even I understand what managing odors means.
Can I add on to that, Sylvia?
Yes, please.
So there is also stringent regulations from CDPHE locally within the county, if it's within a municipality, also within a municipality, for how a compost facility is developed. CDOT is a part of that for the transportation side of things. So there are boxes regulatory that have to be checked throughout the construction process. And then even ongoing, when I was up at CSU, I ran their micro composting facility and was responsible for turning in their annual report. So I know there is requirements and oversight and regulation that we have beyond just the county. It's not just ourselves regulating ourselves. And so those pieces have to be in line to make sure that we're doing the best practices in compost operations.
Great, thank you. And somebody did actually comment in the Q&A that to point out that when you drive by an organic farm, you'll often get odors because of the use of compost and manure. A few people have made a really interesting point about the sustainability of this facility. The notion is that a couple of you brought up the cost of transporting our compost materials to another site and the 100-mile round trip. And I've had a few people say, well, wouldn't it be potentially more sustainable and a whole lot less expensive to just transport them using an electric vehicle fleet? So what if we didn't build a facility, but we changed over the trucks that were transporting these materials to electric vehicles? So who would like to address that?
I'm happy to take a first pass as county on that. So just because you transform the fuel source doesn't mean you're reducing the mileage and time behind windshield. And that is where the cost, the driver associated with the equipment itself often is one of the highest pieces of what makes that charge to and from. So right now, my understanding is estimations are around $75 to $85 a ton at the transfer facility within the county where most organic materials are going, eventually reaching Bob's door out there. And so even if you put a one-time capital infusion and you offset the carbon emissions of the transportation of the vehicles themselves, you're not necessarily decreasing the gate fee. Maybe a little bit you might see there, but that's going to be ongoing over a period of time. And so even if you subsidize that gate fee, there's going to be a break point where it's going to make more sense. Maybe it's 8 years, maybe it's 10 years that you're subsidizing that long term, where that cost and that subsidization will be enough that you could have built a facility somewhere within the county. And so as we think about our climate goals of 2030 and 2050 and even beyond, I think the argument is there that a part of a sustainable infrastructure to manage these materials, and especially with organics being one of the few that we can really hold within our region, there's great opportunity there that makes economic sense, more so than necessarily subsidizing electrical vehicles to offset. And technology-wise, at that scale with those trucks, I don't know necessarily if there's great alternatives out there that exist right now. I know natural gas is an option. Maybe Charlie can talk a little bit about that or others, but that's my thoughts.
You know, and I'll touch base a little bit on that if I may. That you're right about the technology on trucks that's still in development, but I wanted to go a different direction and just say, you know, having a more local compost type facility where more people would have an equitable access to dropping off material. There's still a lot of organic green waste going to the landfill, and primarily because of that large cost. And so if there was something that was a bit closer, right, we would be able to capture more of that landscape or forestry, all of that sort of material that, you know, frankly, landfills are cheap, you know, and is that all we're looking at is if it's just a money thing, do we want to just landfill all this green waste, which then again has the impact on making methane versus, you know, all those climate impacts. So I wanted to tie Tim's conversation to access, more local access that could provide greater diversion.
And if I could add something,
Please.
Even if it's an electric vehicle, or maybe if it is an electric vehicle, that doesn't, it probably actually increases a grower's hauling costs. And right now the hauling costs are prohibitive for a large scale grower to use a large amount of compost and hauling it all the way from Keenesburg. Because of those high hauling costs, it's thousands and thousands of dollars for a grower applying it to a good sized field.
Okay. So I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to address what might possibly be the downsides of a facility like this. Give me one thing that you feel is a downside of an industrial size compost facility somewhere within Boulder County.
I'll start. I mean, I think the downside is having to go through the political process that and all of the uproar and emotion and fear of everybody out in the county. And I just think that is going to be a huge burden and cost for people, residents in the county, as well as for people in county government and people who are trying to make this happen. It's going to take years. It's going to be painful. People are going to get their undies in a twist. I mean, it's just going to be ugly. And that's really sad. And I think that's the downside.
Okay.
And just kind of building on that, you know, to me, the ultimate vision is what I call the distributed compost network, where you compost as closely to any major source as you possibly can. So to me, the ideal is CU has its own compost facility. Every municipality have a compost facility in the way that they have, every municipality has a wastewater treatment plant. I'm not suggesting that they be run as a utility. I don't think that's a good idea. But you know, the downside is, as Elizabeth alluded to, you know, it's a gauntlet to get one of these things up and running. You know, this is an order, you know, what we're proposing for Boulder County is, it's an order of magnitude smaller than A1. This is, you know, in the compost industry, this is considered, you know, at the low end of viable for an operation to be successful. So, you know, I would love it to be smaller still. I would love to, you know, I think it is as close to, you know, being a one-on-one relationship with your composter as possible. That's the ideal, because then you, as a consumer, as a resident, you know, if you feel like you have a relationship with your composter, you're going to be careful about what you put in your waste bin, your compost bin. You're going to be careful that you're not putting contaminants in there that are then going to be a problem to get out. So, you know, for that reason and many others, you know, the ideal is as small a scale as possible. But, you know, the regulations kind of drive you in a certain direction, and this is the best size that makes sense for Boulder County.
Okay.
So I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in. I appreciate Elizabeth's comments, because I think that is a major issue because of lack of understanding and knowledge of the type of facilities, and you know, people don't know, and so they get scared, and I get it. I will say that I believe a wise decision in this regard has 3 pieces to it. I use a three-legged stool principle. You can't, even when you milk a cow on one leg, on one it's only got one leg on the stool, pick your feet up and see how you do. You got to have 3 points of contact, right? So economically viable, that's responsible. That's very important. That's what so much of this is built around, the not the economics, the environmental viability of it. Environmentally sound, that's one leg. Economically viable is a second leg. And the third is logistically deliverable. You got to be able to deliver what you've designed and what makes economic sense. That's the biggest problem with putting it into the county. Logistically getting it sited in a way that will allow the community to accept it. And then after they've had the experience, embrace it. That's what's going to be the hardest thing to do.
Okay. And Tim and Charles, did you want to comment?
Sure. I'll echo Bob's comments as well. I think, though, for me, the most complicated or difficult part is, as I'm reading these questions that are popping up, is going to be bringing, and I believe when and if the time comes to really start evaluating other locations, to bring people together through a good stakeholder process, those who support and those who oppose, and to have good logical conversations to evaluate the triple bottom stool, as Bob illustrated, to truly understand and not exaggerate or have a misconception of what the definitions are of a project, so that people truly know what's it going to look like, how big will it be, you know, and to get feedback. And I think that's really difficult, especially these days with COVID and, you know, Zoom and having to do everything virtually. But I think that's going to be the first hurdle and the hardest hurdles, to bring everybody together and to realize nobody's trying to do anything secret. Let's get it out. Let's have the conversation and let's do what's right and answer these good questions, you know, financially, environmentally. Is it better? How is the equity involved with it? And to really have that conversation, but it's very difficult to do that. So my piece.
Tim?
Yeah, all well said by everyone. And I guess my perspective, or what I'll add from the lens of sort of sustainability, is composting bridges these two unique worlds of sort of zero waste and circular economy with regenerative, sustainable ag carbon sequestration. And at the 30,000 foot level, when those two come together, you think, oh, brilliant. You know, one can be an output to the other as an input. But then as we start to get in the reality of where the world currently is, in what we have available to us, we recognize there's plastic contamination, right, on curbside compost. That's in large part because we have limited regulation on what we can do with single-use plastics in the state of Colorado because of the 93 preemption. That's a factor in it. Economics plays a factor in it. We have some of the lowest landfill tipping fees in the entire nation, right? So you have this economic battle that you're sort of going against to justify the cost that you have built into that. On the other side of the coin, in the regenerative and sustainable agricultural side, right, there is strong demand and requirements on the material that comes out of what all these different individuals want to see. So bringing these pieces together and trying to produce the best thing we can do within the given snapshot of time that we have available to us and all the resources and minds, that's a challenge. That's a hard piece, because each of these different areas and major stakeholders probably have to compromise in some capacity, probably have to let a little piece go. So down the road, we can get to where we can fix those pieces, because there's so many of them that are moving around us. And that's probably one of the most difficult parts, I think, that I see as a challenge of getting it done right within these goals of our zero waste action plan, within our climate action plan goals, of these timelines that we have looking and looming over us, that we need to get there. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. How do we guarantee that existing haulers will bring their organic waste to Boulder County? So there, some of the questions are really about, so we're going to build this facility. How do we guarantee that it's going to be used by Boulder County haulers and only by Boulder County haulers? It's sort of two sides of the same coin that I'm seeing.
I'll just say the easiest is economics. If you make it cheap enough, they'll show up. That's the simplest off the start. And then there's other tools from, government perspective of IGAs and mechanisms you can put in place for flow control of materials and pieces like that. But typically it's economics is one of the simplest.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Tim's right. I mean, I had the bubble chart slide. Economics will be better because of the reduced transportation cost, and every hauler, economics are the bottom line. So if it's cheaper, that's where they'll go.
You want to make it Oldly Boulder County, you make it using your economic principle. It's Boulder County residents are this, and if you're not in Boulder County, it's this.
Got it.
One of the ways you incentivize.
We had an interesting question about the groundwater around a compost facility. Somebody asked, is the groundwater regularly tested for chemicals such as PFAS?
Well, that's right back in my wheelhouse again. So I'll just tell you that any class 3 facility like would have been proposed has to have a very robust groundwater monitoring program installed, and that includes monitoring of all the wells. They test it for all of the potential nutrients, metals. It's all based on your substrates that you bring in as to what they test for. The facility that was being built, everything was on concrete. All the stormwater was being diverted elsewhere, that kind of thing. You manage it through design. But yes, there would be groundwater monitoring wells, and yes, they would be monitored. And if there was a hit, then you have to come up in the corrective actions procedure to identify the source and remediate it. That's the way the groundwater monitoring system works.
Okay. Specific question for Charles. This person says that you mentioned that Longmont has 22% of its residents opting in for compost. How can Longmont grow this participation rate and keep it affordable without a county regional facility?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? So it comes down to the cost. And that's a great question, because we are paying upwards in the $85 a ton, so if that rate continues to go up, we pass that on. We can control and be efficient and try to be judicious about our business. But if the rising costs of compost, if I have to start hauling compost, even if it goes further than A1, the cost goes up. So the idea is a more local, a less cost facility would be able to impact that. So I don't really see status quo reducing our rates in Longmont. We have a good rate, but certainly a more regional or local facility would have a great impact on that. They could either reduce or really extend the point at which rates would need to go up, which could impact other communities, and to allow them as well to initiate or keep their curbside organic programs going.
Okay.
Did I get to the point there?
I believe so. I was, apologize, I was distracted reading all the questions. But along a similar line, I actually had made a note when Dan was speaking that is sort of the same thing. Dan, you talked about that right now we are composting, I believe you said 11% of our municipal waste out of 40% possible. Is that right? That we could be composting up to 40%. Right now we're at 11%, was how I read your slide. And if that is true, how do we get that up?
A local compost facility. So it was already mentioned that if there was a conveniently located local compost facility, then we already have the collection programs in place, and people are getting used to them, and they're increasing the amount of organics that they're putting in those bins. I know there's a lot, for instance, there's a lot of hesitancy to put food waste in your curbside bin initially with the program, and you get more familiar with it over time. So I think that we have, the expectation is that what we'll be getting is more of that waste that's going to the landfill right now, which is a lot of it is commercial landscape material, can be manure, those materials that are not part of the certainly commercial food waste, materials that are not part of the municipal collection programs. That's where we really can stand to see gains in the volume collected.
Elizabeth, I haven't asked you a question lately. I have seen some questions about greenhouse gas emissions. And specifically, somebody asked, someone please directly address the greenhouse gas emissions and minimization of the same by composting methods planned. So one possible read of that question is, won't a compost facility be putting off greenhouse gases? And how is this mitigating that?
So I'm not an expert on this, so some of you other guys might jump in here too. My understanding from the Marine Carbon Project, which Dan referenced with his slides of the fields with the squares on it, with more cows in the squares where the compost had been applied and fewer cows in the other squares. The Marine Carbon Project showed that applying compost one year application of compost to fields caused increased amounts of carbon to be sequestered each succeeding year in that field. So the composting process does indeed off-gas some CO2 into the atmosphere as organic materials are broken down into compost. But when the compost is then applied to a field, that helps sequester extra carbon back into that soil, and not just that year, for several following years after that. And so that is where you get the benefit from the compost in terms of the greenhouse gas and carbon sequestration. So anybody else have something to add to that?
I'll add a little bit, and that is exactly right, Elizabeth. The EPA has done a lot of extensive research on the value of compost and application regarding compost carbon sequestration, and it looks at composting in its entirety as a huge carbon sink. It identifies it as such. In fact, this is off the top of my head, and my head's getting pretty old, so I don't know if I remember this all accurately, but I know that a percentage, something like 1% increase of soil organic matter and soil carbon applied to the available space in you can use the world, and we're needing to create carbon dioxide. It's that massive. If that's the single biggest source of carbon sequestration available right now, it's the lowest hanging fruit to sequester the maximum amount that there is in their whole. There's a you can look to that. Dan might remember the name of that group that's measuring drawdown or something like that. Dan, you might be able to measure that, address that issue. So composting is, in my opinion, the answer.
I have one last question, and then we're going to wrap up. This person said, Tim Broderick briefly mentioned plastics. How would plastic be kept out of the feedstock and out of the finished compost product? It's my understanding that plastic doesn't truly biodegrade, but just breaks down into smaller particles.
Back to me again. I will tell you that we deal with that all the time, and there's two ways that it's going to be done through it. You got to keep the right stuff in this feedstock to begin with, And the materials that are that identify themselves as compostable have to be certified as being compostable in the system being used. So within the industry, Composting Council, Composting Manufacturers Alliance, they're doing extensive field testing on products that will actually work in commercial scenes. So number one, that if we got all 100% of that, we wouldn't have the problem. The biggest problem is ride-alongs, people that put in stuff that's not compostable because it looks like it is, or that kind of thing. So the facility design comes back into place. So you do as much as you can on the pre-sort. You keep everything in the compost pile contained during the process. You don't turn it like the systems that were designed are not turned systems. They're static pile systems. Once it's removed from there, then you quickly manage it through the screening process to remove the non-compostable materials, and you don't grind it into small pieces to start with. You use a larger piece so that you can remove it at the end, and then basically you're looking for a process that's going to manage it to the point where what is compostable is brought down, and then you remove the rest of it the backside. Nothing is 100%. I'll tell you that right now. You'll never get to a place where there isn't going to be a piece of plastic in compost that has had plastic containing containers in it. So don't even think you'd ever get there. You can get pretty close with the proper management on both ends.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something?
Please.
Because I think what Bob said is that's the technical side, and I think that it's also how do we keep plastics out of our feedstock relies to our communities and to our people who are outreaching and education. And I think if you look at a lot of our community sustainability plans, they have big components of outreach and education, and continuing to teach our communities what goes in which container. I'm fortunate to have my own hauler, Longmont, and we have a very strong approach. I know my compost collection drivers are checking containers. They're talking about it. And they also, when they're dumping their load, are being tasked to inspect their loads and pull out plastics. So it's more than just at the processing plant. It's all of us as a community educating ourselves and being engaged. And, you know, I wonder a little bit is if we have our own facility in our region, would we have a little bit more stake in the game, right? To feel proud and to maybe learn more about it. So
okay.
I'll just throw that in.
Great point. Thank you. So we have a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to first let the audience know we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for signing up and participating. I know I learned a tremendous amount, and I hope all of you did as well. We have recorded this. I've put a link in the chat. We're going to put this, I believe, on the page for the Climate Action Issue Team. And if you are interested in learning more about the League of Women Voters, we would love to have you come to our website at lwvbc.org and learn more there. We have monthly membership coffees that you can participate in and learn more about what we do. I'd like to give a very, very sincere thanks to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for giving us your evening and for giving us your thoughts on industrial large-scale composting. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters Climate Action Team, led by Lydia and Jeanette, for doing the moderating. So thank you so much. Do either of you have anything that you want to add before we sign off? All right. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.